Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today we are going over overrated draft prospects for the NBA draft. This upcoming 2020 NBA draft is full of a couple overrated players, and we'd kind of like to highlight some of those that really stick out to us. And ultimately, we want to kind of give some direction to people that are learning a little bit more about the draft. We've done a little bit of research, especially Sheldon, my colleague here. So first, Sheldon, I would like you to go over RJ Hampton. He is your very first overrated prospect.
Yeah, Hampton. A lot of people, some have even been mocking him in the lottery, which I think is a little outlandish. Had a really up and down year for the New Zealand Breakers in the NBL, the same league that LaMelo Ball was playing in the preemptive first overall pick, likely in LaMelo. And Hampton there scored less than 10 points a game in about 21 minutes. Really struggled from the field. Did not display a good shooting touch from behind the arc. He shows signs of being, a quality playmaker, especially off dribble drive penetration. He finds outside corner shooters and outside shooters out on the wing very well, both strong side and weak side. So that's probably his greatest strength is, really being able to read the floor when on the move north and south. But outside of that, Hampton lacks a lot of dynamism as a scorer. He's not only is the shooting struggles a little concerning for me, just in terms of what NBA guard play looks like at this point, as guys who really take the league by storm and have a lot of potential to them are guys that can get their own shot off from behind the arc, but also just work in the mid-range game and keep defenses up on the balls of their feet or put them back on their heels going north and south. And Hampton doesn't really have either of that. But additionally, Hampton, he plays a little soft around the rim. He's got good size, but he doesn't really play to it too well. He kind of plays more like a smaller guard, and while doing so, he, kind of fails occasionally to really play through contact, and he doesn't really welcome contact at the rim, and I think that'll be really negative for him at the next level. We see a lot of the better scoring guards in the league, like Luka Doncic and James Harden. They get to the line and they live there. They draw a lot of contact, they welcome it, and they finish through it. And I don't think Hampton has the makings to ever be like that. And I think Hampton, he's going to be a versatile defender. I think that he compares fairly well to Frank Ntilikina for the New York Knicks, which obviously doesn't sound great, and that's why I think he's an overrated prospect. I think that he has some makings where he can be beneficial on a bench or, for a team as a depth player, but I think any notion of him being, a really, really high caliber player from this class is a little outlandish. Moving on to you, Austin, here, we got Cole Anthony, another overrated draft prospect in many's eyes. What do you think about Cole Anthony?
Yeah, Cole Anthony is the prototypical guy that came out of high school as I believe he's the third ranked prospect in the entire nation. A lot of excitement around him. He's a flashy guard. However, his year at North Carolina did not go very well. He had a huge first game. However, after that, though, he really kind of flamed out. If you want to take a look at the numbers, he was like 38% from the field, 34% from beyond the arc. He was extremely inefficient. He's a weak player. And another thing, he lacks playmaking at the point guard position. That's very tough if you're not an elite scorer and an efficient scorer. I think you got to have that playmaking element to you. He can handle the ball, but in terms of a playmaker, he either turns it on or off in terms of what trying to get assists or trying to score. He can't do them both simultaneously. Cole Anthony is definitely a guy that people think is a franchise changer. Unfortunately, I don't see it the same way. There's people in the media that think he's a franchise changer. There's fans that think that. Some of the media has shifted away from him finally, which is very warranted considering his inefficiency and lack of playmaking. Like I said, no play strength. And he's another guy, like you kind of mentioned about Hampton. You watch him; he avoids a lot of contact at the rim. Goes for very, very tough shots. He's got a big floater. And he kind of, in one of his games this year, he kind of had like a jump hook from like 8 feet out. Very, very strange looking shot. So with that being said, I don't think that that's something that's sustainable. Obviously in a highlight, you'll see that, yeah, that'll go in. But if you watch the tape, consistently watch it, that's not going to go in, nor has that gone in. You can see it by his efficiency that that shot's not going in very often. It's cool to have on a highlight tape, but ultimately that's not going to get you in the league and get you through the NBA. And also something that you do need to consider, North Carolina this year was 14-19, which was their very, very worst record, not even close, since 2001 when they won 8 games, I believe it was. So I think that team success should, ultimately dictate what a player is. However, when it's college basketball and you're the best player on the floor at all times, I think you have a pretty good stronghold on tempo and the pace of the game. And I think you have a huge effect on the game of basketball when you're at the college level and you're a top tier recruit, top tier player. And ultimately, his team just couldn't win. You can't completely blame him for that because it's a team game. But for Cole Anthony's sake, I don't see him as a great prospect. I think he will definitely it's hard to know where he's going to fall because there are some teams that feel the same way we do, and there's other teams that see star guard potential. It's going to be really hard to point out who's who in that mix. So Cole Anthony, in my opinion, is overrated.
Yeah, I think you laid that out perfectly there, Austin. Looking at Cole Anthony's inefficiency, like you had brought up, and it's just going to get tougher for him at the NBA level. You don't get an off night here or there. You get, more like higher athleticism players you're facing night-to-night basis, better rim protection, and just more speed and everything in general. Cole Anthony is, pretty quick twitch and can get shots off. But, his dependence on touch around the rim, like you had brought up, I think will be probably his greatest weakness moving into the NBA level. And I think he did a really great job giving our viewers an outlook on Cole Anthony there. Moving into our next guy here, I've got Killian Hayes, another guard that many seem to be kind of in or out on. Some people see him as one of the top 3 players in this class, and others, like myself, do not see him as a top 15 player in the class. I think that Killian Hayes will get overdrafted. I think he will probably be a likely top 10 pick when some teams look at the potential there with his size at 6'5", good wingspan, really good playmaking ability. That is what I'll give him. Is he sees the floor very well, and he's able to make the right reads consistently. But again, I really lack his ability to function as a scorer. He kind of reminds me of a really low-end Ricky Rubio in terms of, passing vision. I don't think he's quite the passer that Rubio was coming out of Spain. Obviously, Hayes from Germany here in the Euro Cup. And I think that, scoring-wise, he's a sub-30% shooter in his career in Euro League play. He's really, struggled for years. He was playing better this year than he had ever in the past. But at the same time, he only had played in 10 games this year. And I think that part of it was he was, outperforming what he actually is in that 10-game stretch with a little bit of a hot run. And I think that, good for him that those 10 games came right before everything got shut down. And that's the last thing we've really seen for him. But I think he lacks a lot of the skills necessary to be an NBA lead guard. He's not a scoring option, I don't think, as a first or second option for a team. And I think he's going to kind of fit more into that bench role. And honestly, he reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Mudiay coming out, which is not a great comparison for any player. I think that, like Mudiay, there was a lot of thought on potential there. Good size at 6'5", both of them obviously can see over the defense a lot of the times at that height. And both were, prompted with great passing vision and ability to function as passers. But I see, Hayes, I don't believe in him as a slasher. He's, not very fast north-south. He's not super quick twitch. He's got a lot of, reliance going to his left as a slasher. And he's very, very much like Cole Anthony in the way that Austin had laid him out about, finishing with touch rather than force. And at 6'5", he should be finishing with more regularity around the rim. And his efficiency overall really makes me question him. And also the inability and inconsistency from behind the arc. Night in, night out will make it tougher for him to score because guys are going to sag off of him, give him space. And if he's unwilling to play through contact, that's going to be tough for him to get to the rim north-south when players are waiting for him down there, especially with NBA length. Moving on to the last guy here, Precious Achiuwa from Memphis. Obviously had a tough situation there. Austin, bring us some info here on Achiuwa.
Yeah, Chu is an interesting prospect. He's the prototypical big man that you see in college at 6'9", that he can dominate all of these other players at the collegiate level. However, at the NBA, it's just not realistic to translate. Being 6'9", he was often able to overpower the center. Clearly, in the NBA, that is not sustainable unless you are Shaq. I mean, essentially, that's what it comes down to. But for Chua, he's not a skilled player. He has a little bit of a nice touch in the mid range game, but I don't know if that's sustainable. For his sake, you'd hope so. He's not able to stretch out to the 3-point line currently. Hopefully, he would be able to adjust that. But currently, as it stands now, he's not able to do that kind of thing with regularity. Precious Achua is a guy that does not have a go-to move in the post. Most of the time, it's just an overpowering back down and either dunk or laid in on the smaller center or the weaker center. So that has a lot of concerns for me because we've seen this movie play before. This is a horror movie waiting to happen if you take him in the lottery. This will be a complete disaster. There's very few guys that this kind of works out for. If you're going to draft a center, and he's going to need to be 7 feet and super strong, which Achua is not that. He's just not that kind of prospect. He's not a passer. He's not a great defender. So ultimately, you have to be, buyers beware with Precious. He was benefited by playing on a very good team in Memphis. He was supposed to play the 5, got moved to the 4 because of Wiseman, and so my fit, I question his fit. Is he a 4? Is he a 5? They're likely going to draft him to be a 5, but I mean, in terms of size, he would play the 4, but it depends on what kind of system he gets into. Would he be just a small ball 5 then? So a lot of question marks. There's no clear fit. There's no clear skill set for him. And honestly, if you don't have a skill that's super redeeming and really sticks out, that's not a prospect I want. I want a guy that's elite at least at one thing in order for me to take him. That's just how I go with every kind of sport. You got to have an elite trait in order to be worthy of being taken with the top pick. Ideally, you'd want to have multiple elite traits within that draft class. However, he's just not that kind of guy. So with that being said, once again, buyers beware with Precious Achua. And now kind of let me prompt you with this. Who do you believe of this group is the most overrated by the media, the fans, and possibly even general managers and scouts?
Yeah, that's okay. That's a tough one. First of all, I want to jump back to Precious real quick. I think you did a really great job laying him out. I think the tweener role you kind of described was really, fitting. He doesn't have the mobility to really play the 4 and doesn't have the size to play the 5. I think that'll be one of the biggest issues for him, like you had mentioned. All right, and then moving back to your question here, I think NBA fans and the media overrates Cole Anthony the most, in my opinion. I think that after his first opening night game for UNC, I think he kind of has solidified himself as a top 20 pick, regardless of what happened the rest of the year. If he didn't make another shot the rest of the year, he still might have gone in the top 20 picks based on how that first night went when he scored, I believe, was it 50 points?
Yeah, 40 or 50.
Yeah, and yeah, he had an insane night. And he was feeling himself. He shot the ball really well that night. But like we had seen throughout the rest of the season, the season's longer than one game, and he really struggled at that point. So I think NBA fans are kind of sold on him, like you had brought up during your bid on him as a franchise guy or a true lead point guard, and I just don't see that for him. I see him more as a bench scoring option. But I think for NBA GMs, I think Killian Hayes is that answer. That I think GMs are really trying to project what he could be based off size and passing vision, but I just think he lacks kind of the dynamic skills necessary to really become that. And I think that when you get into a guy who has shown severe inabilities with play time, especially at the European level, I think that there's issues with going that route. I mean, we've seen it with Nidal, we've seen it with Emmanuel Mudiay, we've seen it with Dante Exum, and Killian Hayes is a blend of all three of those guys to me. He's got, I got real question marks about him, and I think that, if had seen him more and got more time with him this year, perhaps GMs would have been more willing to see kind of his flaws. But the fact that he was shooting the ball so well in his few amount of games this season, I think really helped his case. And I think NBA GMs are going to really buy on that potential that maybe one day he can be a shooter because he's able to get some space on the perimeter. But space only does you so good if you can't hit the shot. So I think Killian Hayes is by NBA GMs the most overrated of these guys, and I do think he'll go the highest of these guys as well because of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think NBA fans and a lot of people in the media actually do. They I wouldn't say underrate, but they don't like Killian Hayes. A lot of people have been in our mentions about Killian Hayes. So to be quite honest, I don't think that he's really overrated by fans. However, I do see your point about the general managers for sure. A lot of these teams think, we can fix this guy, we can work with this guy. He's got the tools. Toolsy players are fun until they're not. So to be quite honest with you, I think that's a great point. And like I said about Cole Anthony, that first 50-point night really shot up his stock. To compound that, he was a top tier prospect coming out of high school. He's the third overall player in his class. Once again, that's going to help carry fans over, because a lot of these people now with access to YouTube and everything and high school clips, they're following him all the way through high school. And then once they get to college, I mean, they're going to be pretty blind to whatever flaws that they see, because they've been following this guy for so long, want him to be good because they, quote, discovered him in high school. So yeah. I think that's kind of how that goes for the overrated prospects. And I think we covered it pretty well. And I really encourage anybody watching to take a look at what we have here, our body of work. And I also would like some comments and feedback as well, what you think and who you think is overrated.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, guys.